Have you ever wondered why certain years of your life feel stolen? The years when you gave everything, your love, your trust, your energy, and in return you were left empty. Those long seasons where your heart carried wounds that time didn't heal, only buried deeper. You tried to move forward, but something inside you remained frozen in the pain of those lost years. You smiled on the outside, but within your soul whispered the same quiet question, will I ever get back what I lost? There are moments when life feels unfairly tilted against you, when the years behind you seem to mock the years ahead. You look back and see a trail of broken promises, missed chances, and relationships that left you bleeding. Yet even in those shattered reflections, there is a mystery unfolding, a divine plan hidden beneath the chaos, because those years that wounded you were not wasted, they were watched. Every tear you cried, every betrayal you endured, every silent night you begged for peace, heaven took note. Nothing escaped the eyes of God. The world may have told you that time cannot be reversed, that what's lost is gone forever. But they do not know the author of time. They do not understand that the one who created seasons can also rewrite them. When God restores, He doesn't simply give back what you lost. He multiplies it, transforms it, and makes it something you could have never imagined. You see, restoration is not about recovering the same pieces. It's about receiving something so divine that the old pain becomes irrelevant. Perhaps you've carried wounds for so long that they've become part of your identity. The child who was never loved enough, the friend who was betrayed, the believer who kept faith through silence. You've tried to heal yourself by forgetting, by pretending, by staying busy, but the ache always finds you again in quiet moments. What if God never intended for you to forget? What if He intended for you to be renewed? There's a difference between healing and restoration. Healing removes pain, but restoration brings purpose. Healing makes you functional again, but restoration makes you powerful again. And that's exactly what God is about to do in your life. The very years that left you wounded are about to become the foundation of your strength. Those who hurt you will fade into the background as God raises you to heights that could only be reached through pain. Think of a field burned by fire. To the eye it looks ruined, ash, smoke, silence. But give it time. Beneath the ashes, life stirs again. Seeds that could not have grown in comfort begin to bloom in desolation. The fire didn't destroy the field. It prepared it for a greater harvest. So it is with you. The fire that burned you will become the light that reveals your destiny. God has been quietly rebuilding what life tore apart. While you were crying over what ended, He was writing what's next. The delays, the detours, the betrayals, they were not detours from your destiny, they were directions toward it. Every lost opportunity was a redirection. Every heartbreak was a pruning. Every silence was a setup for your revelation. He is not a God who overlooks pain. He is a God who transforms it. There is a divine exchange about to take place, where sorrow becomes wisdom, wounds become wings, and the years of waiting become the years of fulfillment. Those lost years will not be returned in the same form. They will return as peace, as purpose, as blessings pressed down and overflowing. Some of you have lived your entire lives feeling like survivors of invisible wars, fighting battles no one saw, carrying scars no one understood. But you must know this. Your survival was not the end of the story. Restoration is. God doesn't allow pain to be the final word. He allows it to be the prelude to glory. You may not feel it yet, but something is shifting. The same God who saw you broken is preparing to astonish you with His mercy. The same God who allowed the storm is about to reveal the reason behind it. He has been collecting every fragment of your story, every tear you've shed, every prayer you thought went unanswered. And now he is weaving them into a tapestry of redemption so beautiful that when you see it, you'll realize none of it was in vain. Those who once pitied you will marvel at how grace rebuilt you. The places where you bled will become the places where others find healing. The same heart that was wounded will carry wisdom that can only be learned through pain. And when that restoration comes, not just in your circumstances, but in your spirit, you will understand that God never forgot you. He was not late. He was perfecting the moment. Because when God restores, he doesn't simply give back what was taken. He gives you better than before. He turns memories of loss into testimonies of power. He takes the years that made you weep and transforms them into years that make you worship. And one day soon you will look back not with sorrow, but with awe, whispering to yourself, God didn't just heal me, he made me whole again. There are moments in life when you look back and feel as if entire years were stolen from you. Years where you loved deeply and received nothing in return. Years when you gave your best but ended up with disappointment instead of reward. The people you trusted turned their backs on you. The dreams you nurtured slipped through your fingers, and the promises you clung to dissolved into silence. You start to wonder if those years were for nothing, if your sacrifices, tears, and prayers ever mattered. But here's the truth. Not a single moment was lost in the eyes of God. He saw it all. Every detail, every wound, every quiet night when you cried yourself to sleep. They were not ignored. They were noted by heaven. When you think God has forgotten you, it's often because he's working in ways you can't yet perceive. Our vision is limited to the present moment, but his eyes see beyond the pain into the purpose. What felt like abandonment was often protection. What looked like silence was strategy. God never forgot the years that broke you. He was simply preparing the right moment to restore you. You see, divine timing is not about how long you've waited, it's about what he's building while you wait. Sometimes we mistake delay for denial. We assume that if God truly cared, he would have stopped the heartbreak before it began, or reversed the losses before they scarred us. But God's ways are not our ways. His love doesn't always shield us from pain. Sometimes it allows pain to refine us. When he watches you suffer, it's not from indifference, but from infinite wisdom. He knows that certain lessons can only be learned through loss. Certain strengths can only emerge through surrender. Certain blessings can only arrive once you've been emptied of what could never sustain you. Those years that seemed wasted were not lost, they were invested. God planted something deep within you during those seasons of struggle. He was cultivating patience, compassion, and resilience. Qualities you could not have developed in comfort. Every tear watered the soil of your soul. Every disappointment made room for deeper faith. And though you didn't see it, heaven was keeping perfect record of your endurance. Think about Joseph, betrayed by his brothers, thrown into a pit, forgotten in prison. To the world, it looked like he was losing years of his life for nothing, but those lost years were shaping him for the throne. The same God who watched Joseph's suffering is watching yours. He doesn't lose track of your story, even when you do. You might not see the pattern yet, but God is weaving your pain into a purpose so intricate that one day you'll look back and understand why every delay was necessary. Sometimes God hides his greatest blessings inside seasons of silence. You may not hear his voice right now, but that doesn't mean he's absent. When a teacher is quiet, it's often because the test is in progress. God's quietness isn't neglect, it's trust. He trusts that the faith he built in you will carry you through even when you can't see the outcome. The pain didn't erase his promises. It's preparing you to handle their fulfillment. And when God finally moves, when he decides that the appointed time has come, nothing in heaven or on earth can stop him. The same God who saw you broken will lift you before those who doubted you. The same years that felt forgotten will become the years that define your legacy. Every unanswered prayer will echo back as proof that he was listening all along, because when God remembers, he restores in abundance. It's easy to feel invisible when life keeps taking more than it gives, but you are not forgotten. You were never invisible. Even when people ignored your worth, even when your love went unnoticed, even when your kindness was repaid with cruelty, God took note. He saw what others dismissed. He saw what was done to you in secret. He saw the lies, the betrayal, the exhaustion you carried with grace, and he has already written your restoration into his divine schedule. One day you'll look back on the same years that made you weep, and you'll realize that God never abandoned you. He was collecting every tear as evidence for your redemption. Nothing was wasted, not the time, not the love, not the pain. Everything served a purpose. The world may have forgotten your suffering, but heaven did not. And when God steps in, he restores not just the years you lost, but the you that was lost in those years. He remembers the version of you that laughed freely before life wounded you. He remembers the childlike heart that once believed without fear, and he is determined to bring that part of you back. Not as it was, but stronger, wiser, more radiant than before. The years that left you wounded will be redeemed in such a way that you will thank God even for the pain, because you will see it was the soil in which your destiny grew. God never forgets the years you lost. He transforms them into the very testimony that will prove his faithfulness. And when his restoration arrives, it will not resemble compensation. It will resemble rebirth. You will know, beyond all doubt, that every tear was counted, every wound was seen, and every second of suffering was sacred in his sight. When we speak of God's restoration, we must understand it's not about simply getting back what was lost. It's about receiving something far greater, something transformed. What God restores is never a duplicate of what was taken. It is always elevated, purified, and redefined to align with his divine plan for your life. You may think restoration means returning to the way things were before the pain, but that's not how heaven works. God never takes you backward. He takes you forward into a new reality that could not have existed without the loss. You see, when a sculptor chips away at a stone, it may appear that something is being destroyed. But in truth, the artist is revealing something beautiful that was hidden within. The process of loss often feels like destruction. Yet what is truly happening is divine refinement. God uses pain to carve away everything that does not belong to your destiny. The years that stripped you of what you once held dear were not acts of cruelty, they were acts of creation. Through loss, God was shaping you into a vessel that could hold greater blessings, greater wisdom, and greater strength. When God restores, he doesn't return what broke you in the same form. He doesn't give you the same relationship, the same opportunity, or the same dream that failed. Instead, he gives you something better, something aligned with your maturity, your faith, and your divine purpose. His restoration is creative, not repetitive. It's not a rewind, it's a resurrection. The ashes of your past are not swept away. They're used to nourish the soil of your new beginning. Many people miss the beauty of divine restoration because they keep waiting for God to return things exactly as they were. But God never brings you back to the same place you cried in. He leads you into new territory where your tears become testimony. The very area of your greatest pain will become the arena of your greatest power. You thought the heartbreak ruined you, but in truth, it prepared your heart to love with divine wisdom. You thought failure disqualified you, but it actually purified your motives. You thought being forgotten meant being forsaken, but it only made your dependence on God deeper and your faith unshakable. There is a sacred principle woven into the way God restores. What was broken becomes the foundation of what is unbreakable. When He gives back, He doesn't just replace, He multiplies. What was taken unjustly, He returns in abundance. The time you spent crying will return as joy that cannot be stolen. The relationships that drained you will be replaced with connections that heal you. The doors that closed on you will lead to gates that open only through grace. Every no that wounded you was an echo leading to a greater yes from heaven. Consider a tree that loses its leaves in winter. To the casual observer, it looks lifeless, stripped and forgotten, but beneath the surface, unseen roots are growing stronger. When spring returns, the tree doesn't simply grow back what it lost. It blooms even more beautifully than before. Its branches reach higher because its roots have gone deeper. That is what divine restoration looks like. The winter of your life was never meant to destroy you. It was meant to prepare you for an overflowing harvest. When God restores, He also restores your identity. Pain has a way of distorting how you see yourself. After loss, you may start believing you are less worthy, less capable, less loved. But God's restoration renews not just your circumstances, but your confidence. He reminds you that what you went through didn't reduce your value, it revealed it. You endured what others couldn't. You remained standing when everything tried to break you. You survived the dark season because you were built for divine light. That is why when restoration comes, you will not merely feel blessed, you will feel reborn. Sometimes God allows something to be taken so that you can finally see what could never be lost, His presence. He lets people walk away so you can stop seeking validation in them. He lets plans fall apart so you can stop trusting in your own understanding. He lets you be emptied so He can fill you with Himself. And once you are full of Him, everything you thought you needed will either return transformed or be replaced by something far better. The world measures restoration in possessions and timelines, but God measures restoration in peace, in purpose, and in power. His goal isn't to make your life look the same, it's to make you brand new. And that's why when He restores, it feels different. It feels divine. You'll realize that the joy He gives doesn't depend on what you have, but on who you've become through Him. One day you'll see it clearly, that God's restoration wasn't about fixing your past, it was about preparing your future. The pain that once defined your story will become the evidence of His glory. You'll recognize that the restoration He promised was never about replacing what you lost, but revealing what you were meant to gain. Peace that surpasses understanding, purpose that outlasts pain, and blessings that no man can take away. When you finally step into that season, you won't wish to go back. You'll understand why it had to break, why it had to hurt, and why it had to take time, because only then will you see the truth, that God doesn't restore to return you where you were, He restores to raise you higher than you've ever been. Pain is one of life's greatest teachers, though it rarely feels like it in the moment. When you're hurting, it's easy to believe that pain is a punishment, that suffering serves no purpose. Yet in God's design, nothing is wasted, not even the wounds. Every tear, every sleepless night, every betrayal that left you questioning your worth is a seed planted in the soil of purpose. Pain is not the end of your story, it's the hidden beginning of something extraordinary. Think of the seed buried deep in the earth. From above it looks lifeless, trapped in darkness, suffocating beneath the soil. But beneath the surface, transformation is taking place. The seed must crack open. It must break apart before new life can emerge. The breaking is not destruction, it's creation. In the same way, the pain you've endured was never meant to destroy you. It was meant to break open the parts of you that could only grow through suffering. You were not being buried, you were being planted. God often allows pain to enter our lives to awaken something divine within us. It's through adversity that faith becomes real. It's through heartbreak that compassion takes root. It's through loss that we discover the difference between attachment and purpose. Pain refines the soul like fire purifies gold. It burns away everything false so that what remains is pure, unshakable, and true. You may not have chosen your suffering, but God can use it to build strength, humility, and wisdom that comfort never could. Many of us pray for blessings but run from the process that prepares us to receive them. We want purpose without pain, strength without struggle, and faith without fire. But the truth is, spiritual maturity is forged in the furnace of affliction. God allows trials not because He delights in your suffering, but because He knows what you can become through it. Pain gives birth to perspective. It teaches you empathy for others. It teaches you to value peace over comfort and character over convenience. Look at your life and think of the moments that shaped you most. Were they easy, or were they the moments that broke you, humbled you, and forced you to depend on God completely? The pain you thought would kill you was in fact the very thing that gave you new life. The heartbreak that shattered your faith became the soil where deeper faith took root. The rejection that made you feel worthless became the doorway to discovering your worth in God, not in people. Pain has purpose because it strips away illusions and brings you face to face with truth. When you look back on the years that wounded you, understand this. You were in training. God was preparing you to carry a weight of purpose that required endurance. You cannot lead others out of darkness unless you've walked through darkness yourself. You cannot speak hope to the broken if you have never been broken. You cannot comfort others with authenticity unless you've known the sting of despair. Your pain was building something inside you that peace never could. Endurance, faith, empathy, and divine strength. Consider how a diamond is formed. Under pressure, in darkness, through heat and time. Without those forces, it would remain just a lump of carbon. The beauty of the diamond is born from the brutality of its environment. So it is with you. The pressure that nearly crushed you was shaping your brilliance. The years that wounded you were pressing the impurities out of your spirit, preparing you for the light that is coming. Pain also teaches you what truly matters. When you've been wounded deeply, material things lose their hold. People's opinions no longer define you. You begin to recognize what's eternal: peace, love, truth, and the quiet assurance that God is in control. Pain refocuses your vision. It makes you seek God, not for what He can give, but for who He is. You begin to understand that peace isn't found in the absence of storms, but in the presence of the one who comes. There's a strange beauty in pain when you look at it through divine eyes. Because once the storm passes, you realize how much stronger you've become. The person you were before the pain could never have handled the blessings that are coming. You needed to be strengthened. You needed to be humbled. You needed to learn that survival wasn't your purpose. Transformation was. Pain gave you the wisdom to recognize fake love, the discernment to spot deception, and the strength to walk away from anything that doesn't honor your spirit. Every scar on your soul is evidence that you endured what was meant to destroy you. And now, those scars have become your credentials, proof of your resilience, testimony of your faith. When others see your calm strength, they will not know the nights you spent in tears or the prayers that went unanswered, but heaven knows. And because God wastes nothing, even the pain you wish you could erase is now working in your favor. The years that wounded you were years of planting. The harvest is coming. The lessons your pain taught you will serve you in ways you can't yet imagine. One day, what once hurt will make sense. You'll see how each moment of suffering became a stepping stone to wisdom, compassion, and divine purpose. You'll no longer resent the pain, because it will have revealed who you truly are. Not the broken version, but the refined, resilient, and radiant soul God always intended you to become. There comes a moment in every soul's journey when healing alone is not enough. You've patched your wounds, wiped your tears, and told yourself that time will make it better. Yet deep within, something still feels missing. That's because God's goal was never just to heal you. His goal was to renew you. Healing stops the bleeding, but renewal brings new life. Healing restores function, but renewal restores identity. When you've been broken by betrayal, disappointment, or years of inner pain, God's purpose is not simply to make you okay again. It's to make you whole in a way you've never been before. You may have thought you'd never recover from what happened. The heartbreak that took your trust, the rejection that crushed your confidence, the silence that made you feel unseen. But look at you. You're still standing, you're breathing. You've made it through nights you thought would never end. That's not just survival. That's divine evidence that God's hand never left you. The fact that you're still here, still searching, still believing even through your weariness, that's the seed of renewal taking root within you. When something breaks, most people try to hide the cracks. They pretend nothing happened, hoping no one will notice the damage. But God works differently. He doesn't disguise the cracks. He fills them with light. The broken parts of you are the very places through which His glory shines brightest. Just as sunlight enters through shattered glass, His love enters through the wounds you once tried to hide. What once symbolized pain will become the very evidence of His power. Healing focuses on the past. Renewal focuses on the future. Healing asks, how can I recover what I lost? Renewal asks, who am I becoming through this? When God begins to renew you, He doesn't restore you to who you were before the pain. He creates a version of you that could only exist after the pain. You are not the same person you were before the betrayal, before the loss, before the disappointment. And you were never meant to be. That version of you needed to break so the stronger, wiser, more spiritually awakened version could rise. Think of a tree after a storm. The wind may tear away branches, the rain may strip away leaves, but what remains becomes even stronger. New branches grow back, but they grow differently, deeper, more anchored, reaching higher than before. That's what God is doing with you. The storm may have shaken your life, but it didn't uproot your purpose. It made you stretch your roots deeper into His presence. The wounds left behind are not reminders of defeat. They are proof that you survived something powerful enough to destroy others, and you still grew. There's a sacred stillness in the moment God begins to rebuild your soul. You may not feel it happening, but it's there, quietly, consistently, like dawn breaking after the longest night. The thoughts that once tormented you begin to fade. The bitterness that once weighed you down loses its grip. The memories that once hurt begin to feel like distant lessons instead of open wounds. This is what renewal feels like. Not a sudden miracle, but a gradual awakening. Or what matters now? Where God is breathing new life into what you thought was dead. The process isn't painless. Renewal often requires letting go of what once felt like safety, the familiar patterns, the old identities, the comfort of self-pity. It's tempting to hold on to who you were because that pain has defined you for so long. But to step into the new, you must release the old. You can't carry yesterday's weight into tomorrow's promise. God can't fill hands that are still gripping broken pieces. So he waits, not to punish, but to prepare. He waits for you to trust him enough to open your hands, to surrender the fragments, to say, "Do what you will with me." And when you finally do, when you allow God to fully renew your heart, you'll notice something extraordinary. You'll begin to see beauty where there was once bitterness. You'll feel gratitude for the very things that once broke you. You'll realize that what you thought was the end of you was actually the beginning of something sacred. Because renewal doesn't erase your scars, it transforms them into signs of grace. There will come a day when the pain that once defined you will no longer have power over you. The memories will remain, but they will no longer sting. The people who wounded you will fade into the background of a story now dominated by peace. You will smile, not because you forgot, but because you overcame. You will speak from your scars, not your wounds, and others will listen, not because you sound strong, but because your strength carries the weight of authenticity. God is not interested in merely restoring your happiness. He's rebuilding your wholeness. He's creating a new heart within you, one that loves more deeply, forgives more freely, and trusts more completely. The old you had to break for this version to be born. The pain you endured was the fire that burned away what no longer served you. You were not destroyed, you were refined. When God renews you, even your reflection changes. The weariness in your eyes turns into wisdom. The heaviness in your spirit becomes peace. You start walking lighter, speaking softer, and loving more intentionally, because you finally understand what broke you didn't end you, it transformed you. And that transformation was the very thing God was after all along. There are moments in life when you look back and realize that every heartbreak, every closed door, every disappointment had one thing in common. They all felt like detours. You had plans, expectations, dreams that seemed so certain, only for life to twist in unexpected ways. You cried, you questioned, and you begged God to make sense of it all. But what if those detours were not accidents? What if the pain, the loss, and the delay were divine directions, leading you to the very place you were meant to be? The truth is, what we call interruptions, God calls instructions. Every heartbreak redirected your heart toward wisdom. Every betrayal revealed who didn't deserve to walk with you into your destiny. Every delay protected you from destruction disguised as opportunity. You were not being denied, you were being prepared. God never wastes your suffering. The road you didn't choose may very well be the only road that could take you to your purpose. When Joseph was sold by his brothers into slavery, it must have felt like the cruelest detour imaginable. The dreams God gave him seemed shattered. He went from the safety of his home to the loneliness of a prison cell. Yet years later, when he stood as ruler of Egypt, he understood what his pain had been doing all along, positioning him. Every betrayal, every false accusation, every lonely night was part of the process. God had not abandoned him. He was directing him through divine detours. The same is true for you. There were moments when you thought life was punishing you, when doors slammed shut in your face, when people you trusted turned against you, when dreams dissolved before they even began. You saw failure, God saw foundation. You saw rejection, God saw redirection. While you were trying to go one way, He gently turned your path towards something higher, something eternal, something only He could see. The past wasn't a series of mistakes. It was a map drawn by the hand of God. We often assume that divine purpose will unfold in straight lines, blessings that follow obedience, joy that follows effort, peace that follows prayer. But in truth, God's plan rarely travels in straight lines. He leads us through wildernesses, valleys, and storms, not to confuse us, but to complete us. Detours are where he hides the most important lessons: patience, humility, and faith. Without those, we may reach success, but we will not sustain it. So God delays not because he's forgotten you, but because he's forming you. Sometimes God lets people walk away so that you can walk into something greater. He lets opportunities collapse so that you can build on stronger ground. He lets your heart break because he knows a healed heart can carry more love than an unbroken one. What seems like loss is often divine substitution. God removing what was good so he can replace it with what is perfect. The pain of letting go is the proof that something new is on the way. Think of a traveler walking through fog. Visibility is low, steps are uncertain, and progress feels slow. But the traveler keeps moving, guided by faint light, trusting that the path continues even when it's not visible. That's what faith looks like when God reroutes your life. You may not see where you're going, but you trust the one who leads you. The fog is not there to block your way. It's there to teach you to depend on guidance rather than sight. Every unanswered prayer was not a rejection, it was a redirection. You prayed for something that God knew would limit you. You asked for things too small for the greatness he saw in you. He said no, not because you were unworthy, but because he had a better yes waiting down the road. Sometimes the doors that closed behind you were protecting you from rooms that could have destroyed your peace. Sometimes the person who walked away was saving you from decades of spiritual stagnation. God's protection often feels like heartbreak, but it's actually mercy in disguise. If you look carefully, you'll notice how every painful turn led you to something meaningful. The disappointment that pushed you to pray harder, the heartbreak that taught you boundaries, the silence that made you listen deeper. You are not lost. You are being guided through a process that your future self will one day thank God for. The years that felt wasted were actually divine investments. What you thought was random suffering was actually a masterpiece under construction. The detours of your life are the hidden roots of divine purpose. One day, when the fog lifts and the pieces come together, you'll see how every heartbreak shaped your heart to hold blessings that would have crushed you before. You'll realize that God's plan was never to take from you, but to take you through the pain, through the silence, through the confusion, until you reached the clarity that only brokenness could bring. Every painful turn was a sacred redirection. You weren't being punished, you were being positioned. What was meant to stop you only steered you closer to your destiny. God's hand has been guiding you all along, even when you thought you were lost. And one day soon, you will look back at every detour, every delay, every heartbreak, and say with peace in your heart, "Now I understand why it had to happen that way." There are seasons in life when it feels like God has gone silent. You've prayed, you've waited, and still nothing seems to move. The same walls stand where you expected doors. The same pain lingers where you hoped for peace. In those long, quiet seasons, you begin to wonder if heaven has forgotten your name. But it's in that very stillness that divine timing is at work. Silently, perfectly, unshakably. God's timing is never late. It's always precise. When he delays, it's not neglect. When he pauses, it's preparation. You see, time belongs to him. He created it. He moves outside of it, weaving your past, present, and future together in a way your human eyes can't yet see. When we say God's timing is perfect, it's not just a comforting phrase. It's a spiritual law. Nothing arrives in your life a moment too soon or a moment too late. The delay you're enduring is not a denial. It's divine alignment. God isn't withholding blessings from you. He's waiting for the right moment when your heart, your surroundings, and your spirit are ready to receive them without breaking under their weight. We live in a world that worships speed. We want everything now: healing, success, closure, answers. But God works through seasons, not seconds. He allows certain doors to remain closed because behind them are battles you are not yet equipped to fight. He lets certain people leave because their presence would poison your next chapter. He delays some blessings because, if given too early, they destroy your gratitude instead of deepening it. What feels like divine silence is often divine safety. Think of an artist painting a masterpiece. From up close, the brushstrokes may look chaotic, random splashes of color that make no sense. But step back and the image reveals itself. That's how God works with time. You may be staring at the canvas of your life, confused by the unfinished lines and uncertain patterns, but from His vantage point, every stroke is intentional. Every season of waiting adds depth, contrast, and meaning to the picture He's painting of your destiny. There's a reason the greatest stories in Scripture are marked by waiting. Joseph waited in prison before ruling Egypt. David waited years after being anointed before wearing the crown. Abraham waited decades for his promised son. Even Christ waited 30 years in silence before beginning his ministry. Why? Because destiny is not built in moments of applause. It's built in moments of obscurity. Waiting refines you. It purifies your motives. It teaches you obedience, humility, and trust. In the waiting, you are becoming who you need to be for what God has promised. Sometimes we confuse activity with progress. We think that if we're not moving, God must not be working. But that's a lie born from impatience. A seed planted in the soil doesn't grow overnight. For weeks it lies hidden underground, unseen but alive, expanding its roots. Only later does it push through the surface to reveal the life that's been growing all along. That's what God is doing in your waiting season. Strengthening your roots, deepening your faith, fortifying your spirit for the harvest to come. If God gave you what you prayed for right now, could you handle it? Could your character sustain it? Could your heart protect it? Sometimes His mercy delays what His power could easily deliver. He wants your maturity to match your miracle. The promise isn't gone, it's growing. Like a sunrise, it's on its way. Slow but certain, rising in its own divine hour. You cannot rush the dawn, no matter how long the night feels. There's beauty in waiting when you understand it's sacred. Waiting isn't wasted time, it's transformation time. God is not preparing the blessing for you. He's preparing you for the blessing. You're being refined so that when the moment comes, you won't just receive it, you'll steward it. The pain, the stillness, the unanswered prayers, they are all shaping the kind of person who can walk into the promise with grace instead of pride. And one day, when that long-awaited breakthrough arrives, you'll understand why it took so long. You'll look back and realize that every delay was divine protection. The relationships that failed were shields from heartbreak. The prayers that seemed ignored were answers in disguise. And the waiting wasn't punishment, it was preparation for permanence. God doesn't want to give you temporary victories. He wants to establish eternal ones. So if you find yourself in a season of silence, don't mistake it for absence. God's silence is not indifference, it's the sound of construction. Behind the scenes, things are moving, people are being placed, paths are being cleared, strength is being built. You may not see the movement, but heaven is busy. When the appointed time comes, not your time, but His time, everything will align in ways you never could have orchestrated. The doors that once resisted you will swing open effortlessly. The opportunities that passed you by will circle back. The peace that felt distant will become your foundation. And you'll understand, deeply and completely, that every second of waiting was worth it. Because when God moves, He doesn't just restore what you lost. He redeems the time itself. The years you thought were wasted will suddenly make sense. The pain will find its purpose. The silence will reveal its song. You'll know in your heart that His timing was not just perfect, it was merciful. And that realization will make you whisper through tears of gratitude, "Now I see why you made me wait." There's something sacred about a person who's been broken and rebuilt by God. Their voice carries a quiet authority that can't be learned in comfort. Their presence radiates a peace that no easy life could ever produce. The pain they endured became their teacher, and the restoration that followed became their testimony. You see, the same wounds that once silenced you will one day become the very message that sets others free. God never wastes pain, He turns it into power. You may not realize it now, but your story holds the medicine that someone else is praying for. The tears you shed in private will water someone else's hope. The wisdom you've gained through suffering will become a light for those still walking through darkness. That's the divine pattern. God heals you, not just for you, but through you. The comfort you receive becomes the comfort you give. The strength He built in you becomes the same strength that carries others when they can't stand on their own. When you've survived betrayal, when you've forgiven without apology, when you've rebuilt your life after being broken, you carry something divine within you. You carry credibility in compassion. People who haven't suffered may speak about faith, but those who have suffered live it. Your survival itself is a sermon. Every scar on your soul whispers, "I've been there, and I made it through." Those who see you now may not know what it cost you to smile again, to trust again, to love again. But God does, and He will use your resilience to remind others that healing is real. Sometimes you don't need to preach to inspire. Just your existence after everything you've been through is proof of divine faithfulness. People notice when you walk in peace. That doesn't make sense. They notice when you show kindness instead of bitterness, forgiveness instead of revenge, calm instead of chaos. That's how your testimony speaks, not always through words, but through your character. You become a living example of God's restoration power. Think about how powerful that is. The very things that once humiliated you will become your evidence of grace. The betrayals that made you doubt love will make you a voice for those learning to love again. The years that crushed you will give you insight to uplift those who are now where you once were. You'll become a guide, not because you have all the answers, but because you've walked the same valley and know who carried you through. Your empathy, born from pain, will be the bridge between broken hearts and divine healing. This is why your story matters. It's why you couldn't skip the pain, why you couldn't bypass the betrayal, why the road had to be hard. If your life had been easy, your words wouldn't have weight. But now, when you speak, hearts will listen, because you're not just speaking theory, you're speaking testimony, and testimony carries authority. It's not borrowed knowledge, it's lived truth. When you tell someone, God can heal you, it will resonate because your life is the proof. There's something deeply divine about how God uses the healed to heal others. He could have chosen angels, perfect and unscarred, but He didn't. He chose the broken. Those who know what it feels like to be shattered and restored, because nothing reflects His glory more than a wounded soul made whole. Every scar you carry has a story, and that story carries a purpose. Someone out there needs to hear that it's possible to survive what you've survived. Someone out there needs to see that peace can follow pain, that forgiveness can follow betrayal, that joy can bloom again where sorrow once reigned. Even now, God is preparing moments where your story will speak life into others. You may share a word that brings comfort to a stranger, or a small act of kindness that restores someone's faith in humanity. You may never even realize how deeply your presence impacts another soul. But heaven keeps record of every seed you plant. The years you thought were wasted are actually becoming a ministry without a pulpit, a testimony without a title. And here's the mystery. The more you share your story, the more you'll continue to heal. Every time you speak of God's goodness, your own heart strengthens. Every time you comfort another, the echo of your past pain grows quieter. You begin to see that nothing was wasted, not the tears, not the nights, not the years. God turned your suffering into a sermon, your wounds into wisdom, your heartbreak into hope. One day, when you look back, you'll see that your story was never just about you. It was about everyone who would find courage through your survival. It was about every soul who would see your scars and believe that God can restore what life tried to destroy. Your life will be living proof that restoration isn't just possible, it's promised. And when you speak, it won't be from the wound anymore. It will be from the place of healing, from the calm after the storm. Your voice will carry the same message that heaven whispered to you in your darkest nights. You will rise again, and through you others will too. And so, as you stand here now, bruised perhaps, but not broken, remember this: nothing you've lost is beyond God's reach. The years that wounded you, the nights that silenced you, the people who left you, none of it slipped through His hands. He was there in the pain, He is here in the healing, and He will be the author of your restoration. Every chapter that seemed unfinished will find its ending in His grace. Every unanswered prayer will make sense in the light of His timing. You were not forgotten, you were being refined. You were not rejected, you were being redirected. What was meant to destroy you became the foundation upon which He is building something eternal. The pain you endured was not a curse. It was preparation for the beauty that's about to unfold. Because when God restores, He doesn't merely give back what was taken. He gives back multiplied peace, deeper faith, and a strength that can never again be shaken. Soon, you will see that all the waiting, all the weeping, all the wondering were worth it. The same God who watched you suffer will now lift you before the eyes of those who thought you'd never rise. The same seasons that left you wounded will bloom with the evidence of His goodness. You will look back and realize the years weren't lost at all. They were transformed, they were redeemed. And in that moment, when you see how perfectly He turns sorrow into strength, pain into purpose, and loss into legacy, you'll lift your eyes to heaven, and with peace flowing through your soul, you'll whisper the words your heart always longed to say. God, You didn't just heal me, You made me whole again.